Hey, sixth graders, we're going to continue reading The Chocolate Touch. All right, so I hope you're enjoying it so far and you've read chapters 1 and 2. And in this video, we're going to read chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then after each chapter, answer the questions and then move on to the next chapter. All right, so I'm going to start with chapter 3 and it's on page 20. All right, so just follow along as I read it. All right. The birds were chirping in the tree outside John's window, and the sky behind was deep blue. The bedroom door opened a few inches. "Hey, Sleepy," Mrs. Midas called. "Everything else is up." John put on his bathrobe and slippers and ambled up to the bathroom. His sister Mary was still brushing her teeth, and he had to wait until she finished. "Come on, Mary," he said a little crossly. "Don't take all morning." "Here you are," Mary said, handing him the toothpaste tube. While Mary soaped her face, John squeezed a little bit of the toothpaste onto his brush. The paste was pink. John made a face at his toothbrush. It didn't seem fair that he should have to brush his teeth with stuff that tasted just like his tonic. A stinky taste, he called it. Jack opened his mouth and pushed in the end of the toothbrush. As soon as it touched his front teeth, he noticed a delicious sweetness in his mouth. It tasted of the best kind of chocolate. He pushed the brush to and fro, and the taste seemed to grow stronger. He removed the brush. The bristles were brown. "What kind of toothpaste is this?" John asked. Mary was drying her face. "The same kind," she answered. "It says on the tube, Blanco Dent." John read. It was the same kind they had always had. "Why is it chocolate flavored this time?" he asked. "Boy, it's good." "Silly," Mary said. "Course it isn't chocolate." She hung up her towel and swished out the bathroom. John squeezed some more toothpaste onto his brush and continued to brush his teeth. Chocolate again. It was marvelous, rich, sweet, smooth chocolate, chocolatey chocolate, like the single piece of chocolate from the box the night before. There seemed to be no further need for the toothbrush, so John rinsed it and hung it up. He squeezed out another bit of toothpaste onto his fingertip this time. He put his finger in the mouth and ate the toothpaste off. When he took his finger out again, it was stained chocolate brown. John wasted no more time. He put the end of the toothpaste tube into his mouth and emptied the paste onto his tongue. It squeezed out like thick, creamy chocolate. Mary looked into the bathroom. "Hey, what are you doing?" she demanded. "Yummy," was all John said. John and Mary were a little late getting to the dining room, and Mr. Midas was already on the way to his train when they sat down at the breakfast table. John ate up the toothpaste. Mary told their mother. "Oh, you sneak," John whispered. "Well, you did," Mary reminded him. "And then a waste. Isn't it a waste, Mother, to eat up all the toothpaste in one day?" Mrs. Midas was serving their orange juice. "Mary, really," she cried. I'm sure John was only joking. He must have been pretending to eat the toothpaste. "No, he wasn't," Mary insisted. "I was watching, and I saw him squeeze it right into his mouth. He said it was chocolate." "Oh, dear," protested Mrs. Midas. "Chocolate again. Now I know it was just a joke. He just wished it were chocolate. Mary, come on now. Drink up your orange juice. Both of you. Your bacon and eggs will be ready in a minute." As Mrs. Midas left the room, John took up his glass of orange juice and put it in his lips. As soon as he tilted and the liquid began to flow into his mouth, a happy look came to his eyes. "Boy, that's good," he said at last, lowering the empty glass. "Chocolate juice?" Mary looked at John. Then she looked at her glass of orange juice. It was a bright orange color. She tasted it. It tasted like orange to her. "It's not chocolate juice," she said. "It's orange juice. Orange juice is good for you." "Yes," said John. Mrs. Midas said, hearing the last few words as she carried in the tray of bacon and eggs. "You must drink your—" She caught sight of John's empty glass. "John," she said, "you good boy. That's first time in ages you finished your orange juice without having to be told to." "It tasted of chocolate," John exclaimed. "All right," Mrs. Midas said, "very funny. But don't tease Mary too much, remember? Mary's younger than you are. John silently picked up his fork and sliced the yolk of fried egg. The yellow broke over the white, and he shivered as he watched it, as he always did. I can't eat this, he told his mother. Of course you can, Mrs. Midas said. You drank your orange juice. Try to eat your bacon and egg. John scraped up the small piece of egg and put it into his mouth. It immediately became chocolate. Chocolate white, chocolate yolk, both lovely, lovely chocolate. John mumbled. Chocolate egg. In almost no time he had finished every scrape of egg on his plate. Then he tried the bacon. The bacon turned to chocolate too. John had never before enjoyed his breakfast so much. After the orange juice that had turned to chocolate juice in his mouth, the fried bacon and egg that turned to fried chocolate, he ate 2 slices of chocolate toast with chocolate butter and chocolate marmalade, washed down with a glass of chocolate milk. I'm very pleased with you this morning, Mrs. Midas said, as she helped John with his coat. If you promise to eat your lunch at school as well as you ate your breakfast, I'll give you a dime to buy some chocolates with. Whoa. Oh, that's all right, John said. I don't think I'll need it. Mrs. Midas looked puzzled as she waved goodbye. Do you think John has a little obsession with chocolate? All right, so that's the end of chapter 3. All right, so you guys answer the questions, and then continue on. We'll continue reading chapters 4, all right? So just pause the video, answer the questions, and then come back to it, all right? So chapter 4 starts on page 27. John had the bad habit of chewing things. When he was thinking hard this morning, he had several things to think about. What had made the toothpaste taste like chocolate? What had made the orange juice taste like chocolate? What had made the bacon and eggs taste like chocolate? What had made the toast and butter and marmalade taste like chocolate? Each one of these things had felt the way it had always felt before. The toothpaste had felt soft and pasty. The bacon had been hot, crisp, and oily. The toast had been crunchy and the marmalade sticky and lumpy. But everything had tasted like chocolate he had eaten in bed last night. John put a gloved thumb in his mouth and thoughtfully chewed. His mother had frequently pointed to him that chewing his gloves made little holes that let in the cold air. But he chewed them just the same when he was thinking hard. This time he noticed something very queer about the thumb of his glove. Instead of tasting leathery, it tasted like chocolate. John pulled his thumb out of his mouth. The part of the glove that had been in his mouth was now brown instead of black like the rest. He bit the end of the leather thumb again. It came right out in his mouth, right off his mouth, leaving his own thumb bare. John chewed it. It was like chewing leather made of chocolate. Leather that melted like chocolate in a second or two. He swallowed it. The gloves were not new. John had them quite a while. He couldn't understand why he had never thought of eating them before. He tried to tear off one of his fingers, but the leather was too strong for him. He put it in his mouth. He immediately turned into chocolate. Then he was able to break it off easily. He popped it into his mouth and chewed it up and swallowed it. It was delicious. Walking along, devouring his glove, John did not notice one of the schoolfellows, Spider Wilson, until he heard his voice. John's gone crazy. John's gone crazy, Spider yelled. Then he turned on John. Don't they feed you where you live? He sneered. Spider was in the grade just above John and was one of the meanest and slyest boys in the whole school. John gulped down a large piece of the second glove's palm and looked pleased. What's the matter? Spider demanded. Do your people make you eat leather? This is a special leather, John replied. He licked his lips and sighed contentedly. It turns into chocolate as soon as you put it in your mouth. Look, John bit off the glove's little finger and took it out of his mouth. Now it's chocolate. He put it back into his mouth and gulped it down. Give me a piece, Spider said. Why should I? John wanted to know. They're my gloves. Hand over a piece, Spider said. Do I eat your gloves? John asked reasonably, his mouth full of chocolate. Why should you eat mine? Those aren't real gloves, Spider said. Whenever one person has candy, he has to share it with the others. That's the club rule. What club? John asked. Never mind what club, Spider said, but you better let me have some of that chocolate. Without waiting longer, Spider snatched what was left of the second glove. John was too surprised to resist, and he didn't want to anyhow. He had a feeling that he had enough chocolate for a while. He was getting a bit thirsty. Spider ran only a little way ahead. When he saw that John wasn't going to fight to get the glove back, he started to eat his prize. He stuffed the leather into his mouth and took a big bite. Spider stopped short in his tracks. He frowned and bit deep into the leather again. Disgusting! It tasted worse than just leather. It tasted like leather with which a boy had made mud pies and snow piles and patted old dogs. John thought perhaps he might be getting late for school, so he started running. He left Spider Wilson spitting and soggy remains of the glove into the gutter. Still giggling to himself about the defeat of the enemy, John walked between the great stone pillars at the entrance to the school grounds. He had gone no more than halfway to the main building where he heard Susan Buttercup calling him. She was standing near the jungle gym with some of her friends. "I've got something to show you, John," she shouted. As she came running to meet him, he could see that she was waving something in her hand that flashed as it caught the rays of the sun. It was a silver dollar. "It's a birthday present," she exclaimed, showing him the dollar. "Isn't it beautiful?" The sight of such wealth made John forget the triumphs of his own day. "It's a good present," he said. "Are you sure it's made of silver, though?" "I only got a whole bag of gold coins in the Christmas stocking. Only they were chocolate coins covered with gold paper. Of course it's real silly." Susan said, "My daddy said so. You can feel it if you don't believe me." She handed him the coin. John looked at the coin suspiciously. "All right," Susan said. "Bite it, if you think it isn't real. Go on, bite it." John felt rather silly. "I can see it's real now," he said. "I don't have to bite it." "But I want you to," Susan insisted. "You weren't sure." "Well, make sure. That's what they always do on television. When a cowboy wants to make sure a dollar's real, he bites it." Jack put the dollar about the halfway into his mouth and reluctantly bit it. His teeth went right through the coin. The part that had passed between his lips were hard but sweet chocolate. Susan could hardly believe her eyes. She had given John a complete circle of silver. He sadly handed back the crescent. John didn't know what to say. Susan couldn't speak. Tears trickled down her cheeks like rain down a window pane. She looked at the piece of dollar in her hand. She looked up to John, whose face was red with embarrassment. "John Midas," Susan blurted out at last. "I hate you." She turned and ran away before John could think of anything at all to say. All right, so that's the end of chapter 4. So pause the video, answer the questions, and then we'll move on to chapter 5. All right, so it seems like anytime John bites into anything, doesn't matter if it's food or not, it instantly turns to chocolate. Do you think that resembles the title of the story, The Chocolate Touch? Do you think John has a chocolate touch that turns everything into chocolate? That'd be nice, right? All right, and it seems like he's the only one that has the chocolate touch, because when Spider ate it, the leather, all he tasted was gross leather. He did not taste the chocolate that John tasted, right? All right, so let's continue on and read chapter 5, all right? So chapter 5 starts on 35. John hung up his coat, got his notebook and pencil out of the locker, and sat down at his small table just in time for the second bell. When Miss Plimsoll walked silently into the classroom, as soon as she appeared in the doorway, all the chattering and scuffling stopped. The 20 boys and girls sat straight in their chairs and looked straight ahead at the clean blackboard. "Good morning, children," Miss Plimsoll said. "Good morning, Miss Plimsoll," the class answered respectfully. Miss Plimsoll sat at her high desk, blinking her eyes as she surveyed the room. Then she opened a little drawer in her desk and pulled out a spectacles case from which she took her reading glasses. She removed her long-distance glasses, but on her short-distance glasses snapped shut. The spectacles case replaced it in the drawer, shut the drawer, tilted her head forward so that she could look over the glasses on her nose. She said, "This morning, children, we are going to have an important test." They were some groans and few oohs and ahs. Miss Plimsoll lifted up one of her hands and silence was restored instantly. "No complaining, please," she said sternly. This test will show me how well you've been learning your arithmetic this year. It'll be a short one. I'm going to write just 4 problems on the board. I shall expect you to solve them all swiftly and accurately, and to write your answers neatly. You will place your paper in front of you now. You will write your name at the top right-hand corner, and then you will place your pencil beside your paper, sit back in your chair, and wait until I give you the signal to begin work. Miss Plimsoll turned to the blackboard and began chalking up the test problems. Tests always made John nervous. Besides, his lips were feeling dry, and the taste of the chocolate was strong in his mouth. He raised his hand. "Yes, John?" Miss Plimsoll asked. "Please, may I go and get a drink of water, please, Miss Plimsoll?" he asked in a small voice. "Well, very well. Hurry back. We're going to start in a few minutes." John gratefully slipped out of the room and walked quickly down the quiet corridor to the water fountain. His tongue felt thick with chocolate. The cold water would be refreshing. He pressed his foot down on the fountain treadle, and a stream of clear, ice-cold water spurted up from the silver nozzle in the white enamel basin. He lowered his head until the jet of water reached his lips. The cold water splashed delightfully against the outside of his mouth. He opened his lips. As soon as the water gushed in, it turned into ice-cold chocolate water, thin and sweet, quickly stopping the flow. John looked with dismay at the shallow puddle that had formed and was now draining away in the basin of the fountain. He hurried to another fountain on the second floor of the building. But there the same thing happened. The clear ice-cold water turned to liquid chocolate in his mouth. When John finally got back to his classroom, all the other pupils were bent over their tables, busily scratching away. Miss Plimsoll looked up from her book as John tiptoed in. She looked at the clock on the wall, looked back at him, and wagged her finger reprovingly. John began on the first of the 4 problems, but he was so worried about the chocolate water that he couldn't keep his mind on his work. By the time he was ready to start the 4th problem, the other boys and girls were already putting down their pencils and straightening up and smiling at each other. 2 minutes to go, said Mrs. Plimsoll. Concentrating hard, John took the end of his pencil between his teeth and began to nibble it. It immediately turned to chocolate. Then he noticed an even more disturbing change. Although he had taken the pencil out of his mouth, as soon as the first piece of chocolate had crumbled off, the pencil was continuing to change to chocolate. The chocolate was slowly but steadily moving down the pencil, replacing the wood and the lead inside, changing it into a chocolate pencil before John's very eyes. The magic, for John now knew that his power must be magic, was apparently getting stronger. By the time the whole pencil had changed from red, yellow, and black, dark brown, Miss Plimsoll was announcing that only a few seconds remained in which to write down the final answer. "Just a minute," John pleaded. "Shh," said Miss Plimsoll, cautioned him, holding a finger up to her mouth. "Shh," caressed the slow workers, who were becoming almost as excited as John. But John felt worst of all. He felt sure that he could finish the problem and write down the correct answer, if only he had something to write with. "But Miss Plimsoll," he begged in loud whisper, "my pencil's turned to chocolate." "Hush, John," Mrs. Plimsoll said. "I speak to you after the bell." John tried to write with his chocolate pencil, but the point was too soft, and he only succeeded in making a chocolate smear where he should have written 72. All right, so that's the end of chapter 5. All right, so answer the questions, and then in another video, I'll read another few chapters of the book. All right, so I hope you're enjoying it so far. All right, and I will continue reading and make another video. All right, if you have any questions, please email me. Thank you.